What's up everybody, and welcome to the channel. In today's video we are doing a triple back-to-back comparison with the 2023 Nissan Z, 2023 Toyota Supra, 2023 BMW M2. All of these cars have 6-speed manual transmissions, rear-wheel drive, and they're a pretty good spectrum of price ranges. So let's get right into comparing these three mid-level performance cars and see what they all have to offer. Now, to start off with all the pricing for these three cars, they're arranged in least expensive to most expensive. A Nissan Z Performance is going to start at $51,000, getting up to around $54,000. This one, price as tested, is $53,600. On the Toyota Supra, a 3.0 is going to start at $53,000, getting up to around $62,000. Price as tested is $58,400. On the BMW M2, you're looking at a starting price at $62,000, getting up to around $75,000, and the price as tested is $67,000. So looking at the performance, all of these cars have a 3-liter 6-cylinder motor. We get a twin-turbo V6 on the Nissan Z with 400 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. These cars with the manual do dyno around 380 to the wheels. Looking at the Toyota Supra, this is an inline 6-cylinder single-turbo motor, and this car is pumping out 382 horsepower with 368 pound-feet of torque. However, manual Supras dyno at around 400 wheel horsepower. Looking at the M2, it's another inline motor, twin turbocharged however, and this car pumps out 453 horsepower with 406 pound-feet of torque. However, once again, underrated motor, they dyno at 463 wheel horsepower. 0 to 60 time for all the manuals is pretty similar. I've done all these cars. I can do around 4.4 to 4.2 seconds on these cars with manuals. Automatics, these two are going to do around 3.8 seconds. The automatic Z is around 4 seconds flat. So then to move on to exterior styling, purely subjective, if we look at the M2, it's got a super boxy design, very modern looking. I just like how squared off everything looks. It looks really unique, and I think it does come together nicely. You have these wide body looking fender flares. So to me, I think it looks really nice and up to date. I don't really have an issue with that. On the Supra, certainly the most sleek car of the batch. Beautiful lines everywhere. It certainly is a beautiful car next to these two boxy looking cars. On the Nissan Z, once again, we got that retro vibe, very squared off looking. I think each car, quite honestly, in their own ways, looks really cool. It's nice to see unique styles on modern cars today. So no issues with the front ends. If we move to the back now, the Nissan Z, once again, you got that heritage retro vibe. I think this rear end is stunning. The taillights are fantastic. It comes together nice, and you see these really good looking wheel arches with that super cool blade. Supra, once again, super sleek. You got massive fender flares, so much exaggerated lines. It's such a curvy car. Comes together really well. M2, you can really see those boxy fender flares. I love that aspect. Boxy in back, really cool design. But I think overall the M2's super cool retro style and this like squared off design comes together well. Looks, again, all subjective. Comment below which one you think looks the best. But I think for each car, I think each of these three looks super cool for what they're trying to be. So moving on to the interior with the Nissan Z, this is obviously the cheapest car. It's pretty nice in here, not ultra refined, but still a pretty cool place to be. You got some nice leather, you got synthetic leather, and this micro suede on the seats. The seats themselves are a little short. They're not really a bucket seat, so you kind of feel like you're on top of it. So it's not the most hunkered down feeling car, but it's pretty roomy in here. There's plenty of storage in the doors. You even have a center console, big trunk, good sized glove box. Pretty good technology, not the most up-to-date, but as much as you would need, and you get a pretty cool digital gauge cluster. So not a bad place to be for this price point. And then moving on to the Toyota Supra, definitely a little bit more hunkered down. These seats are super comfortable. They really cradle your legs, and it's a nice bucket seat. You have pretty good technology, good graphics, not the most fanciest thing in the world, but pretty much everything you would need. There is some nice carbon fiber, and the plastics in here feel really nice. It's a step up from the Z for sure, with just the refinement levels. Not as much storage in here. Door pockets are really small, no center console, small glove box and smaller trunk. However, you do get that little extra refinement, and it feels a little bit more performance focused, being hunkered down with these nice bucket seats and the small windows. So then on to the BMW M2. First off, you get a huge LCD curved display, super tech savvy. Not everybody's favorite to have all this information. There is quite a lot of information in the car. I do think it looks good in the M2. You have a very premium and refined interior. You have a lot of extra nice materials, super comfortable seats like in the Supra with extra color contrast. So you can tell this is another step up in refinement level. You also have pretty big glass, so it feels open in here. Feels like just a really good place to be. Not as hunkered down as a Supra, but it certainly makes up for that with the extra refinements, comfort, and technology in the M2. So with all that out of the way, let's start up each car, get a quick rev clip, and then take them each for a spin. Alright, so setting off in the M2. First thing you're going to notice, this thing's pretty darn fast. The extra 50 horsepower roughly comparing to the other cars, this packs a punch, and the top end is where you really notice it. Above 60, above 4,000 RPM, this car starts to take off. It is pretty nice to drive. So, what you're going to notice with an M2, it's a really nice place to be. The price point, it should be a pretty nice car. Very refined, really good technology. It really does feel like a high-end car. You're not like missing anything. You have all the bells and whistles, all the refinements to just feel like a pretty expensive car. You have fantastic visibility, huge windshield and everything. Seats are incredibly comfortable and supportive. I mean, this is an amazing daily. It has it all. It really does have it all. Only downfall, I would say, the manual transmission is a little rubbery on the shifting itself. However, it's a very forgiving clutch and shifter overall. So if this is your daily, your normal car, it's a forgiving car enough to where it's not really too hard to drive. So it's nice to be in. You just got a little bit of that rubbery engagement, which is a little weird. And then being that it does weigh a good chunk heavier than the Supra, there is just a little bit of weight you're throwing around when you're taking sharp turns. We do have a full mountain video of taking an M2 to the mountains, same with the Z and the Supra, so check those out if you want to see a really aggressive drive in one of these. However, normal driving, it still is super composed and pinpointy. I mean, it's just a nice all-around performance car. I would say another drawback is the fact that it doesn't really feel at all backbreaking, which I guess is a good thing in many ways. However, when you think of an M car, you think of some compromises for the performance. However, this car, honestly, in the M2 mode and everything in the Sport Plus, it still is tame and pretty comfortable. Gosh, that power is insane. But I would say it doesn't have that extra character. If you modify the car, that's where you're gonna get that. So this doesn't get as hardcore as you may think for an M car. But overall, no complaints. It is just a great car to be in. So much room, so much performance, just such a good blend of everything in this car. I mean, you really can't go wrong. It's pretty awesome. All right, so now in the Toyota Supra. Still got plenty of power. There is a little bit less top end that you can totally feel above the 4,000 RPM mark. First thing you're going to notice though, this is so much more hunkered down and shrink wrapped around you. It's a significantly smaller car. The windows are a lot smaller. Visibility just not quite as good. Shifter is incredibly notchy. This is such a driver engaging manual to be in. I mean, that is just a joy to use this manual. So it really gives you that driver engagement. And being a little bit lighter, when you're taking turns in this, we drove a few Supras on the Tail of Dragon and a few things like that. This car is so pinpointy. Whatever you want to do taking a turn, this car just does it. While the M2 is really, really composed and a competent car to drive, the Supra dials it up a notch as far as the performance level and handling. The brakes, I will say, are a little vague in this when you first press it. The M2s are significantly better, so that's a pretty nice increase. But But yeah, this basically takes the M2, it takes it up a notch as far as the pure fun factor. And like I mentioned, with the M2, you don't really get that back-breaking aspect to where it feels like a full-on M car. This feels like a full-on M car. Obviously, this is built by BMW. It has that characteristic. This does take it up a notch to where when you're in sport mode, you genuinely feel like you're in a performance car 100%. It still is, when you tone it down, a comfortable car to drive. This would be a good daily, all that sort of thing. You're definitely sacrificing some of that storage space and interior. You know, it's just not quite as roomy. You don't really have all too much storage solutions, but you have really comfortable seats. These are bucket seats that cradle you so well, and you just get that like performance vibe in it, and yet it still tones down enough to be a comfortable, refined feeling car. You can tell this feels every bit of a $60,000 car, and you just get more of that fun factor to it. So it is a nice place to be. Basically, take the M2, lose some weight, get rid of some of the practicality, and make it more focused. That's what the Toyota Supra is. However, you can still do the refined things in it. Not quite as much technology. The M2 screen, really fancy, really nice attention to detail. This interior is still really nice. You got some cheap plastics on it, but overall the things you touch, the leathers feel good, seats are very high quality. All of this looks really refined as well. So it's a good place to be for sure. Just really that driver-focused sports car. All right, now in the Nissan Z. Certainly no slouch. This thing is a pretty fast car too. They're all fast. I would say this power, there's a little delay with turbo lag, and then it hits you. So certainly quick. First thing you're gonna notice, not gonna lie, this feels significantly cheaper than the other two cars. It just doesn't feel quite as nice, and the seats are really not all too good. They're very short on the base. I just feel like I'm sitting so on top of the car. It just doesn't really give you that hunker down performance vibe that you get in the other two cars. So there's a significant difference. The manual, while it's very forgiving like in the M2, clutch pedal's not too bad, a little short. The shifter, it feels good engaging each gear, better than the BMW. However, it feels a little wobbly just the way the shifter feels. So it feels, I don't know, a little odd to shift. You get used to it, but it just doesn't feel quite as tight as the Supra for sure. Other things, it does have a lot of glass, so you got really good visibility in here. You know, left and right shoulder, really not all too bad. And there's a lot of storage in here with center console space. The trunk's pretty large as well. I will say there's not all too much character with the car. I don't know, there's no modes, there's nothing that changes in it. All you really have is rev matching on and off. So it could use some work just to have that extra character to make you feel like you're in something extra special. So it is a big difference from the other two cars. It feels like a pretty good step down as far as just how cool and how nice it feels. It doesn't give you that performance focused hunker down feeling. You're really just on top of it, and at 5'11", I just can't quite get comfortable. I feel like my legs are too tall in here, and the seat kind of feels like it's on the floor, along with having you feel like you're kind of up high. So it's a much different seating position. I think the other two cars nail it a lot better. These seats could really use an improvement. Gosh, I'll say it's fast though. It almost feels faster than the other two just because when the turbos kick in, it really pushes you hard. So the Z seems like it's a good blank canvas. It could use a lot of upgrades to really be on the level of the other two cars. There really is a big difference. Refinement level, it does feel pretty nice in here. It's not quite on the level of a BMW, so it doesn't have that luxury touch. However, it's nicer than the old 370Z. You get some cool materials in it. Technology is pretty decent, not as good graphics of the Supra, but you get all the information pretty much the same. Really nice gauge cluster in this for sure. So I would say this just kind of takes all the performance things and tones it down to where it's kind of a numb feeling Supra, I would say. It's the Supra, just tone it all down and make it more of a normal car. However, around the town, stuff like that, it's easy to get in and out of, easy to drive, plenty of power, a pretty fun to drive manual transmission. So it's kind of a good entry-level, mid-level price point car. You just want to play with some power and not spend $60,000. You know, Z is a good way to go. Just add some modifications to get the character up on par with where the other cars are. So then going over why would you buy each car, I think the buyer of a Nissan Z, maybe this is your first time getting to this price point where you want to keep it a little toned down. You don't want to hit that $60,000 mark. And I think if you're really just daily driving it, using it like a normal car, the fact that it's just easy to get in and out of, easy to drive, definitely makes it pretty beneficial. On top of that, I think if you're not really planning to push the car all too hard in the tight, twisty mountain trips, track driving, you know, why pay more for cars that are better at track driving if you're never gonna do it? So this car is kind of just as much as you need on the street, and I think it kind of gives you that window, since it's a little bit lower cost, to do some modifications to add the character. You got plenty of power to do some highway pulls and just do that sort of driving with it. So I think the Z is for the buyer who's not really gonna do the performance driving, mountain trips, and track driving. The Z is all you need on the street and really nothing more, nothing less. The Supra is the car, if you really want the most driver-focused, engaging car, you're gonna be hitting the track, you're gonna be hitting the mountains as well, and actually push this car to the limits. This car is all about driving. You're sacrificing that space, you're sacrificing, you know, the more open feeling for this, but you're getting the driver's car with the Toyota Supra. The BMW M2, this is the more mature buyer. You want these cars so bad. You want that fun sports car, but for whatever reason, you probably need back seats and a trunk to have a more practical car. The M2 gives you that fun, engaging manual sports car. However, it is practical, it's more refined, it's a little bit more grown up. You're really only sacrificing that extra pinpointy handling. Still handles amazing, but it's just not quite as pinpointy as the Supra would be, but you got the mature back seats and that grand feeling. So there are my thoughts on the Z, the Supra, and the M2, how they compare and contrast. I think each car really does offer something unique, and the fact that they're each priced pretty far apart from each other, a good enough price gap, I would say, to make them kind of worth what they are. If you want a good entry-level, mid-level sports car, room to modify it to make it a little bit more character, and you're not going crazy in the performance driving, Z is plenty good. If you want that driver-focused feeling, Supra is the way to go. And if you need that practicality, but still want the fun factor, M2 is it. So comment below, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these three cars. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, stay tuned for plenty more content, and I'll see you all in the next video.